Welcome to our channel, where the stories of people from different eras and professions come to life. We are in magnificent Ephesus, right by the sea, where the great temple of Artemis reaches toward the heavens, and ships from all over the world fill the harbor. Subscribe, and after listening, be sure to share your impressions in the comments.
In New York City, there was a position that decent people only remembered when they couldn't sleep. The night watchman, the town crier. A man with a horn and a rattle who wandered the dark streets announcing the hour and that all was calm. Most heard his voice through sleep, like the wind or creaking shutters, familiar and unnoticeable. But for the watchman himself, every night was a separate life, with its own encounters, secrets, and that special loneliness known only to those who have seen the city without a single living soul on the streets. Nicholas Hanson was known in his quarter by his voice, deep, slightly hoarse, with a characteristic rasp earned over 22 years of service. He was 50, an age when an American no longer builds castles in the air, but still stands firmly on his feet, if, of course, his legs didn't ache from 6 hours of patrol on icy cobblestones. He lived in a basement apartment on Lavender Street, though lavender was only a memory there. In the winter of 1847, it smelled of dampness, cold smoke, and sauerkraut that his wife Karen, patient as the winter sea, fermented in a huge barrel right in the hallway. 6 children. 6. The eldest, Frederick, was already 21 and had gone to sea, writing rarely. The youngest, little Ingrid, 4 years old, was the only one who met her father in the mornings. Not because she loved him more, but simply because she woke up earlier than everyone and waited for the warm bun from the baker Sven, who opened his shop at 6. Such a man. Nothing special, you'll say. A watchman is a watchman. But Nicholas had one feature that set him apart. He remembered faces. Every face he had ever seen was imprinted in his memory like a portrait painted by a diligent artist. A sailor who came ashore 3 years ago and asked for directions to the Port Tavern. A fishwife selling herring on the corner of South Street one rainy Tuesday last autumn. A gentleman in a black coat who passed the mayor's house twice on Christmas night. All of them were stored in Nicholas's head with wrinkles, moles, and scars. The irony of fate was that Nicholas saw poorly. Old glasses in a tin frame with a cracked left lens set crookedly on his broad nose. The world beyond 10 steps blurred into a muddy watercolor. But if someone came closer, click, the face was imprinted forever. I am the conscience of this city, Nicholas sometimes said after a mug of dark beer in the Three Anchors Tavern on the waterfront. He said it without boasting, rather with the quiet confidence of a man who truly believed his words. The tavern keeper Jens chuckled and treated him on the house because Nicholas, for all his seriousness, was a good conversationalist and never forgot to warn if he saw suspicious people near the tavern. The conscience of the city. Funny, isn't it? But let's not rush to conclusions. Sometimes conscience is exactly what is needed when others prefer to sleep soundly. Winter that year came early and seriously. By late November, the canals and waterfront in New York had a thin layer of ice, and by mid-December, the frost had locked them solid enough for boys to skate right under the hulls of moored barges. Nicholas went on patrol at 9 p.m., a woolen scarf wrapped over the collar of his official coat, the horn slung over his shoulder, copper, polished, resonant. The rattle in his right pocket, lantern in his left hand, dim and smoky, but better than nothing. His route went from the central square through the waterfront, along the water toward the upper districts, then a turn and a loop back through the alleys to the starting point. 4 full rounds per night. Every hour he stopped at a crossroads, raised the horn to his lips and called, "Listen, residents, it's 10 o'clock. North wind, clear sky. God save the President and our city of New York." His voice carried through the empty streets, echoed of stone facades, slipped into open windows, comforted the sleepless and irritated light sleepers. That was how it was every night. And that was how it was on the night when everything began. December. Nicholas remembered exactly because the day before Karen had been darning his spare socks and grumbling that by Christmas they should buy the children at least some candy, but there was no money. He promised to take an extra shift during the holiday week. They paid 12 shillings more and left the house with his usual feeling of guilt. Guilt for not being able to give his family more, for growing old while life got more expensive, for the long winter and coal at $4 a sack. The first and second rounds passed without incident. New York slept. Eyes on the water glistened in the moonlight. Somewhere near the port, dogs barked, and the wind carried the smell of tar and wet wood. Nicholas passed the mansion on Broadway, a 3-story building of grey stone with high windows and an iron fence. The house of Dr. Eric Stafford. Nicholas knew it as he knew every house on his route. Dr. Eric Stafford, surgeon, widower, respected man, one of those who donated money to the orphanage and bowed first in church. Nicholas walked on, all quiet. Then came 3 a.m. He had just raised the horn to his lips at the corner of Broadway and Franklin Street, preparing to announce the time, when he heard it. A woman's scream, high, desperate, as if someone was trying to call for help, but the sound got stuck in the throat and came out as a ragged, hoarse cry. The scream lasted 3 or 4 seconds and then broke off. Nicholas froze with the horn at his lips. He listened. Silence. Only his own breath hanging in white clouds in the frosty air.
He adjusted his glasses, shifting the cracked left lens so the crack didn't fall on the pupil, and looked toward Dr. Stafford's mansion. Dark windows, not a single light. Then the same scream again, but quieter, as if a mouth was covered with a pillow or a hand. 22 years I've walked these streets, thought Nicholas. I've heard screams of drunks, screams of fighters, cries of women in labor, howls of cats in March. But this sound, no, this one is different. He approached the iron fence of the mansion. The gate was bolted from inside. Behind the fence was a small front garden covered with snow and 3 steps to the massive oak door. Nicholas knocked on the gate with the handle of his rattle. A hollow, metallic clang rolled down the street. A minute or 2 passed. Finally, a light appeared in a first-floor window, flickering, candlelight. The door opened slightly, and a man appeared on the threshold in a long nightgown, holding a candlestick. The servant.
Nicholas recognized him. Peter, a middle-aged man with a heavy jaw and sleepy eyes. "What do you want, Hanson?" The servant's voice sounded displeased, but without fear. "It's 3 in the morning. I know what time it is," replied Nicholas. "That's my job, to know." "I heard a woman scream from this house." Peter blinked, then shook his head with the expression of a man forced to explain the obvious. "It's a patient, Hanson. Dr. Stafford treats seriously ill people. You know he's a surgeon. A woman with a stomach ailment. She's in a bad way. The doctor is treating her at 3 in the morning. Illness doesn't keep hours. Go on your way, watchman. Everything is fine." The door closed. The light in the window went out. Nicholas stood for another minute, peering at the dark facade through his blurry lenses, then turned and continued on his route. What else could he do? Dr. Stafford was a respected man, and the servant had given a reasonable explanation.
A sick patient. What was wrong with that? And yet Nicholas knew screams of pain and screams of fear. They sounded different.
Pain was when a person could not hold the sound inside and it burst out involuntarily. Fear was when a person called, when they hoped someone would hear. That scream had been a scream of fear, but Nicholas shook his head, exhaled, and raised the horn. "Listen, residents, it's 3 o'clock. The wind is dying down, the frost is strengthening, all is calm." The next night he heard the scream again, exactly at 3, as if on schedule, and again from the mansion on Broadway, and again, short, desperate, quickly cut off. Nicholas did not knock on the gate this time. He stood, listened. Silence. He noted the time in his tattered notebook with a pencil stub, though he himself did not understand why. The third night, the scream. 3 o'clock. Same tone, same break. The fourth night, the same. By the fifth night, Nicholas caught himself hurrying his steps as he approached Broadway. After 2 o'clock, he wanted to be closer, to hear more clearly, to understand. Karen noticed the change. At dinner, boiled cod, potatoes, rye bread, she looked at him over the children's heads and asked, "You're sleeping badly during the day, Nicholas, tossing and turning. Has something happened?" He wanted to tell her, but what exactly? That he heard a scream? That some woman was screaming in the doctor's house? Karen would say the same as the servant. "A sick person, Nicholas. The doctor is treating her. Don't meddle in what's not your business." "Nothing," he said. "My back hurts. The frost is strong." Karen nodded, but her eyes lingered on him a little longer than usual. She had known him for 26 years, and when Nicholas Hanson said nothing, it usually meant something. On the sixth night, Nicholas approached the mansion earlier, at 2:45, and stood in the shadow of an alley opposite, waiting. The frost pierced to the bone. His feet in the official boots had long gone numb. There was no moon. The sky was overcast, and Broadway lay before him like a dark corridor, with rare spots of dim light from oil lanterns. He adjusted his glasses. The crack on the left lens caught the reflection of a distant lantern and split it in two. 3 o'clock. The scream. This time, Nicholas was close enough to understand. The sound came not from the upper floors. It came from somewhere below, from the basement or semi-basement, with barred windows that barely showed above the snow line at the foundation. And one more thing. In one of the second-floor windows, a silhouette flashed. A man stood at the window, looking out at the street. Nicholas could not make out the face, too far for his eyes, but the silhouette was male, tall, thin, upright. He stood motionless for a few seconds, then stepped back into the room and the curtain was drawn. Nicholas felt uneasy. For the first time in many years, he felt a cold that had nothing to do with winter. On the seventh night, the screams stopped. Nicholas stood at his usual place in the alley opposite, waiting from 2:45. 3 o'clock, silence. 4:15, silence. 4:30, nothing. He felt relief and almost immediately anxiety, because silence after a scream could mean two things. Either the pain had passed or life had passed. Nicholas moved on along his route, and then the wind changed. It blew from the north and brought with it something that made Nicholas stop in the middle of the street. A heavy, sweetish, oily smell. Not wood, not coal, not peat, something else. Something for which Nicholas could not find a name, but from which his stomach tightened into a hard knot. He turned. Above the roof of Dr. Stafford's mansion rose smoke. Black, thick, greasy, completely unlike ordinary chimney smoke. It did not dissipate, but stretched in a dense ribbon, slowly spreading in the frosty air. And the stench! Lord, that stench! As if someone had burned wet leather, fat and hair at the same time. Nicholas stood and stared at this smoke through his old, cracked glasses. A black pillar against the dark sky. No stars, no moon, only smoke and that smell. "What is burning in your fireplace, Doctor?" thought Nicholas. "What is burning at 3 in the morning, at the very minute when the woman stopped screaming?" He stood for a long time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. The smoke gradually thinned. The smell was carried away by the wind. New York slept, and no one, except the old, nearsighted watchman with the copper horn over his shoulder, saw this black smoke, or smelled that terrible, inexplicable stench. Nicholas raised the horn to his frozen lips. His voice sounded in the night, even and habitual, just as always. But his hands were trembling, and that tremor was not from the frost. "Listen, residents. It's 4 o'clock. Sky overcast, north wind. All is calm." So he said. But for the first time in 22 years of service, Nicholas Hanson lied to his city. You know what distinguishes an observant person from a merely curious one? The curious looks where he is pointed. The observant looks where no one points. Nicholas Hanson belonged to the second type. And in the morning after that night, when the black smoke rose above Dr. Stafford's mansion, he did what a curious person would not have done. He returned. It was about 8 in the morning. A pale winter dawn had barely broken over the rooftops of New York, coloring the sky the color of spoiled milk. Nicholas should have been sleeping. His shift had ended at 6, and usually by 6:30 he was already lying on the narrow bed in the basement apartment while Karen gathered the children. But that morning, sleep would not come. He lay with his eyes closed and saw the black smoke. He felt that smell, greasy, sweetish, wrong. He heard the silence that had come in place of the scream. He got up, quietly dressed, pulled on his boots, and went out while Karen was busy in the kitchen. The streets were already waking up. A milkman passed with his cart. A cab drove by. A fishwife on the corner was arranging baskets of frozen fish. An ordinary December morning. Nicholas walked quickly, almost not feeling tired. That's how it is when anxiety replaces sleep. Broadway. Dr. Stafford's mansion in daylight looked different, more solid, calmer. Grey stone facade, freshly swept steps, a brass plate by the door. Dr. Eric Stafford, surgeon. Smoke rose from the chimney, ordinary white smoke. They were heating the fireplace or stove, nothing ominous, nothing suspicious. The house of a respected man in a decent neighborhood. But Nicholas was not looking at the house. He looked down at his feet, where the iron fence met the wall and formed a narrow gap. Exactly there, on the border of the pavement and the front garden, the snow was stained gray. Ash. Someone had carried ashes from the fireplace and dumped them here by the fence, right onto the snow. Carelessly, hastily, a scattering of dark gray flakes mixed with something greasy and black. Nicholas squatted, adjusted his glasses, shifting the cracked left lens, looked carefully and saw it. Among the ashes, among the charred lumps and cinders, something glistened. A small object, oval, dark from soot, but with that characteristic matte sheen that silver gives. Nicholas looked around. The street was empty. Only the wheels of a distant cart creaked. He reached his hand through the bars of the fence and picked up the find. A locket, small, the size of a large coin, on a fragment of a thin chain. The silver was tarnished, covered with a layer of soot, but undoubtedly silver.
Nicholas rubbed it with his thumb. Under the soot, an engraving appeared. 2 letters intertwined in an elegant monogram, A and L. He turned the locket in his hands, tried to open it. Inside there could be a miniature portrait or a lock of hair, as was customary, but the lid had fused from the heat and would not yield. Nicholas slipped the locket into his coat pocket, straightened up. His knees cracked. And then something happened that only a person who knew how Nicholas Hanson's memory worked could appreciate. The letters A and L, meaningless in themselves, launched in his head a mechanism like a watchmaker sorting through gears. A face. Where? When? A week ago? No, 8 or 9 days. Late evening, at the very beginning of his shift.
Nicholas was walking along Broadway toward the first point of his route and saw a woman at the door of Dr. Stafford's mansion. Young, about 25. Dark hair under a simple kerchief, pale face, delicate features. The dress was not poor but worn, the kind worn by poor provincial women who had come to the big city for the first time. On her neck, a locket on a silver chain. The woman stood on the steps holding the railing as if she felt unwell. The door opened, the servant Peter came out and let her in. The door closed. Nicholas remembered her face as he remembered all faces, but at the time he had not attached importance to it. Who doesn't come to a doctor? Now, standing by the fence with the charred locket in his pocket, he felt something cold and heavy sink to the bottom of his stomach. The locket from the ashes. The woman on the steps. Screams at 3 in the morning. Black smoke. Don't rush, Nicholas, he told himself. Don't imagine things. You're an old watchman with bad eyes, not a detective. Maybe the woman recovered and left. Maybe the locket was lost by a maid. Maybe the smoke was from burning old furniture. Anything was possible. But that part of his consciousness that had walked dark streets for 22 years and learned to distinguish the sound of trouble from the sound of everyday life said something else. During the day, he did not sleep, tossed for 2 hours, then gave up and sat by the window, looking at the legs of passers-by. From the basement apartment on Lavender Street, only legs from the knees down were visible. Karen was darning children's shirts and glancing at him with growing concern. "Are you ill, Nicholas?" "No." "Then why aren't you sleeping?" Thinking. What can a man think about all day instead of sleeping? He was silent, then decided. "Karen, have you ever felt that something was wrong? You can't explain exactly what, but you know it's wrong." Karen put aside her darning and looked at him.
26 years together, 6 children. She knew that tone.
Is this connected with what makes you toss at night? With what you called nothing? Nicholas nodded but could not tell her. Not because he didn't trust her, but because he was afraid. Once you say it out loud, the words become an accusation. And accusing a respected doctor without proof was a dangerous thing for a night watchman earning $14 a month. "When you're ready to tell, I'll listen," said Karen, and took up the needle again. For this calm, unobtrusive wisdom, Nicholas had loved her for all 26 years. In the evening before his shift, he stopped at the Three Anchors Tavern. Not for beer, although he didn't refuse a mug of dark. Why hide it? He needed Jens, the tavern keeper, a former sailor, a man through whose establishment passed the entire waterfront crowd. Sailors, merchants, newcomers, drifters. If anyone knew about missing people, it was this tavern that buzzed like a disturbed hive. Dim light of oil lamps, thick tobacco smoke, smell of fried herring and spilled beer. Nicholas settled at the edge of the bar closer to Jens, who was wiping pewter mugs with habitual unhurriedness. Jens was stout, red-faced, with an anchor tattooed on his left forearm and eyes that had seen more than they wanted to show. "Jens," began Nicholas, taking a sip of beer, "tell me this. Have you heard of women disappearing in the port area lately?" Jens stopped wiping the mug, looked at Nicholas, then glanced around. The habit of a man who knows walls have ears. "Why does this interest you all of a sudden, Hanson?" "Just heard talk. Want to understand if there's truth in it." Jens was silent for a moment, then leaned closer and spoke quietly, almost in his ear. "There is truth. In October, one disappeared. A newcomer from upstate came looking for work. Lived in a boarding house on Water Street. One morning, the landlady looked in. Things in place, but the woman gone. No one saw her leave, no one saw where. In November, another, a young Swede, worked as a laundress at the port, also disappeared. The police wrote it down as presumably left the city. A convenient answer, right? Newcomers can always, presumably, leave the city. And there were others." Jens paused. "Maybe there were, rumors circulate, but who counts them, Hanson? These are poor women without relatives in the capital. Who needs them?" Nicholas finished his beer. The locket in his coat pocket lay like a stone. A and L. Newcomer, young, dark hair, pale face. Stood at the doctor's door, holding the railing. Who needs them? Jens had asked. A good question. Only Nicholas was beginning to suspect that someone did need them. Very much. The next day, overcoming himself, Nicholas went to the police station. The office was located in a gloomy building near the old market. Nicholas had been there before. Watchmen regularly reported night incidents, but that day he went not on duty, but as a citizen with a suspicion. Inspector Morganson received him in a cramped office on the second floor. The office was furnished austerely. A table, 2 chairs, a cabinet with files. On the wall, a portrait of President James Polk. Inspector Morganson himself turned out to be a dry, trim man with neat sideburns and a piercing gaze of grey eyes, about 40, in a uniform buttoned to all buttons. Nicholas removed his cap, sat on the offered chair and told, not everything. Instinct prompted him to keep the locket, but he spoke of the screams, of 6 nights that the screams stopped, of the black smoke and the smell. Morganson listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair and folded his fingers into a steeple. Hanson, you are a night watchman, correct? Yes, mister. Inspector. And you want to say that Dr. Eric Stafford, a surgeon who treats at the presidential level, donor to the hospital, member of the medical society, is doing something bad based on sounds you heard at night and smoke you saw? I heard a woman scream 6 nights in a row, Mr. Inspector. And on the 7th night, the scream stopped, and black smoke came from the chimney that smelled as no fireplace should smell. Sick people scream, Hanson. Any doctor will confirm that. I know how sick people scream. This was not a scream of pain. It was a scream of fear. Morganson was silent, then leaned forward, and his voice became quieter but harder. Listen, Hanson, I'll say it straight. You are a good watchman. You have a good reputation. But I have reports that you don't mind a mug or 2 at the 3 anchors during duty. I don't blame you for that. The work is hard. The winter is long.
But you understand that accusing a respected man based on sounds heard at night by a man who, let's say, is not always sober. You understand how this looks.
Nicholas felt blood rush to his face. He had not been drunk on those nights, not once. He knew that as surely as he knew the time, because that was his job, to know. I was sober, Mr. Inspector. Possibly. But I have no grounds to disturb Dr. Stafford because of your suspicions. If you have facts, real facts, not sensations, come back. Until then, I strongly recommend you mind your own business and not create awkward situations for yourself. Do you understand me? Nicholas understood. Understood even more than was said. He rose, put on his cap, and left. On the stairs, he stopped and leaned against the wall. His hands shook, not from fear, but from quiet, powerless anger of a man who had been listened to, but not heard. Facts, he thought, going down to the street. He needed facts. Very well. Nicholas adjusted his glasses. The cracked lens slipped again as he walked along the market street. He decided to watch the house himself. Not at night. At night he was tied to the route. But he had time between waking and going on shift from 3 in the afternoon until 9 in the evening. 6 hours was enough to observe. That same evening, around 5, Nicholas stood in the familiar alley opposite the mansion on Broadway. December darkness had already thickened, but lights burned in the house windows. Nicholas saw poorly. The distance was too great for his eyes, but he could make out some things. Servant Peter came out with a basket, headed to the shop on the corner, returned in a quarter of an hour. In the second-floor window, the same tall, thin silhouette flashed. Dr. Stafford. Nicholas could not see the face, but the figure was the same. Then, around 7, a carriage arrived, a private one, dark-bodied, without markings. A man in a dark coat got out and quickly entered the house.
Nicholas strained his eyes to the point of pain, but could not make out the face. Too far, too dark. But he remembered the gait, quick, nervous, with a slight lean to the left. The carriage left. The man stayed in the house about an hour and came out with a small valise he had not had when he entered. Nicholas wrote everything down in his notebook. Time, observation details. The handwriting was poor, fingers frozen, but legible. The next evening he came again, and the next. For 3 days in a row, Nicholas stood in the alley, wrapped in his coat, shifting from foot to foot, watching the house through cracked lenses. He saw little. His eyes failed him, but he saw enough. Dr. Stafford left the house twice a day. In the morning toward the hospital, in the evening he returned. Servant Peter carried baskets, beat carpets, carried out ashes. Visitors came rarely, 1 or 2 people a day, decently dressed, looking like patients coming for an appointment. Nothing suspicious.
Nothing that could be called a fact.
But Nicholas noticed one small, almost insignificant detail. The barred windows of the semi-basement, the very ones from which, it seemed to him, the screams had come, were now tightly curtained from inside with dark fabric. A week earlier, when he had looked at them during the night patrol, there had been no curtains. They had appeared exactly after the night with the black smoke. Why curtain basement windows? Thought Nicholas on his way home. What are they hiding behind that fabric? Karen met him at the threshold. She stood with arms crossed on her chest, and in her eyes there was neither anxiety nor anger, only the tired determination of a woman tired of waiting for explanations. You leave 3 hours earlier and return right before your shift for 3 days in a row. You don't sleep, you've lost weight. Nicholas Hanson, I'm asking for the last time, what is happening? He looked at her, took off his glasses, wiped the cracked lens with his sleeve, put them back on. Karen, he said quietly, I think something very bad has happened in Dr. Stafford's house, but I have no proof. The police don't want to listen, and I don't know what to do. Karen was silent for a few seconds, then came closer, put her hand on his shoulder and said, Eat, sleep at least 2 hours, and then tell me everything, not in pieces, everything. And for the first time in these days, Nicholas felt something like relief. Small, fragile, like the flame of a candle in a draught, but real. The locket lay in his coat pocket. A and L. The woman with the pale face and dark hair who had disappeared from the port area. Black smoke at 3 in the morning. An inspector who did not want to hear. Nicholas Hanson was a night watchman, not a detective.
He had bad eyes, old glasses, and $14 a month. But he had a memory that did not let faces go, and stubbornness that did not let questions go. And the questions kept growing. Every city has its invisibles, people who are passed by unnoticed, who are not invited to visit, not considered worthy of conversation, and not taken into account. In New York in 1847, such invisibles were street boys, grimy, quick-footed, ubiquitous. They knew the city better than any policeman. They knew in which yard laundry was drying, over which fence one could climb, which baker left yesterday's buns by the back door, and which merchant would not notice if an apple disappeared from the cart. They were the eyes and ears of the streets. Exactly such eyes were now needed by Nicholas Hanson. He had known Rasmus for a long time, a 13-year-old boy, red-haired, thin, with a scattering of freckles on his weathered face and quick, mouse-like eyes. An orphan. His mother had died 2 years earlier of consumption. He had never known his father. He lived at a stable on the outskirts of the waterfront, where for small work they allowed him to sleep in the hay. Nicholas met him on night patrols. Rasmus was one of those boys who fell asleep late and woke early because hunger did not let him sleep. Nicholas never chased him away. Sometimes shared bread, sometimes simply said, "Go to sleep, Rasmus. Night is not for children." The boy snorted. What kind of child was he? But took the bread. A silent trust had been established between them, the kind that exists between people who know what it is to walk dark streets alone. Nicholas found him on the afternoon of December 23rd by the waterfront canal. Rasmus was sitting on a stone parapet, fishing through a hole in the ice. More for appearance than result, because there was nothing to catch in a December canal. Next to him perched 2 younger boys. Ole, about 11, snub-nosed and silent, and Michael, 12-year-old son of a laundress who lived in a basement 2 houses from Nicholas. "Rasmus," said Nicholas, sitting down beside him on the parapet. "I need help." The boy glanced at him from below, sizing him up with a completely unchildlike look. "What kind of help, Mr. Hanson?" "I need eyes, young, sharp eyes. Mine, as you see," Nicholas tapped the cracked left lens of his glasses, "no longer what they were." And he told them, not everything, neither about the locket nor about the black smoke. He said that one house on Broadway needed watching. Who came, who left, what was brought, what was taken away, especially what was brought. "How will you pay?" asked Rasmus without embarrassment. 2 shillings a day to each and a bun from Sven's. Rasmus exchanged glances with Ulla and Michael. 2 shillings was not big money, but for a boy living at a stable, it was the difference between a hungry and a full evening. And the bun from Sven's, warm, fluffy, with cinnamon, was a kind of luxury for them. "Deal," said Rasmus. Thus Nicholas Hanson acquired his own small army. And I will tell you, it turned out to be the smartest decision he made in this whole story. The boys started work that same day. Rasmus took the morning watch from dawn to noon. Ole and Michael took the afternoon. They changed places, moved around, did not linger in one spot. Street boys, who would pay attention? One sweeps the sidewalk for half a shilling, another runs on an errand, the third just stares around. Invisibles. The first results appeared in 2 days, on Christmas itself, when all New York sat at home,
lit candles and ate rice porridge with cherry sauce.
Rasmus ran to the basement apartment on Lavender Street, knocked on the window with the agreed signal, 3 short, 1 long, and when Nicholas came out, he rattled off, dancing from the cold. In the morning, a cart drove up to the house, not the front entrance, but through the yard via the back gate. 2 heavy crates. The driver groaned. Servant Peter helped carry them in. One crate was long and flat, the other square, smaller. On the square one, I saw an inscription. What inscription? I'm not strong in reading, Mr. Hanson, but there were letters. I remembered them. Rasmus squatted and drew on the snow with his finger. E-T-H-E-R. Nicholas stared at the letters. Ether. He had heard the word. A few years earlier, newspapers had written about a discovery made in America, a substance that plunged a person into sleep and allowed surgeons to operate without pain. A miracle of medicine. They talked about it in taverns, discussed it in markets. Ether.
And the long crate? Nothing on the long one, but it clinked when they carried it. Metal inside, tools, surgical instruments. Something else, added Rasmus, lowering his voice. Ole climbed a tree in the yard. From there you can see a window on the back facade, 1st floor. He says he saw a room, a table white as in a butcher's shop, and something shiny on the table. Maybe those things from the crate. And the windows have iron shutters. They closed them as soon as the crates were brought in. Nicholas gave Rasmus the promised coins and bun. The boy disappeared into the twilight as swiftly as he had appeared. And Nicholas stood by his basement window, listening to the muffled laughter of the children behind the wall. Karen was distributing Christmas gifts, an apple and a candy to each, and he thought, ether, surgical table, iron shutters, missing women. Everything was forming a picture that made his insides go cold. Dr. Stafford was not simply treating patients, he was doing something else, something that required silence, locked doors, and women whom no one would look for. But Nicholas was a realist. Suspicion is not proof. A drawing in the snow is not evidence. And an old watchman with spoiled eyesight was not the kind of witness a court would believe. On December 26th, the 2nd day of Christmas, Nicholas was summoned to his superiors. The note came with a messenger early in the morning when he had just returned from his shift. Report to the night watch office by 10 o'clock. Senior Supervisor Lundgren. The night watch office was in an unremarkable building near the west gate, a small room smelling of sealing wax and tobacco. Senior Supervisor Lundgren, tall, grey-haired, with the face of a man forever tired of other people's problems, sat at the table, turning a pen in his hands. Next to him, in an armchair by the wall, sat Inspector Morganson. Nicholas felt the ground sway slightly under his feet, but did not show it. He removed his cap and greeted them. "Sit down, Hanson," said Lundgren. "The conversation will be unpleasant." And the conversation really was unpleasant. Lundgren spoke dryly, in official language, but the essence was simple. A complaint had been received against Nicholas Hanson from a respected citizen. The name was not mentioned, but Nicholas understood without a name that it concerned the watchman behaving improperly, harassing residents of a decent house, peering into windows, standing for hours in an alley, spreading defamatory rumors. In addition, there were reports of the said watchman's tendency to consume alcohol while on duty. "That is not true," said Nicholas in an even voice. "I do not peer into windows, I do not spread rumors, and I do not drink on duty." Morganson spoke up, calm, benevolent, almost sympathetic. "Hanson, no one wishes you harm, but you must agree. Your behavior in recent days has been unusual. You came to me with accusations against one of the city's most respected doctors without a single piece of evidence. You stand opposite his house for hours. Understand, this raises questions. People may think you are unwell. There it was, unwell. The word was spoken softly, but Nicholas heard in it the clang of an iron door. In New York in 1847, from an unwell person to the madhouse was one step, one report, one doctor's signature. And if that doctor was a friend of the police inspector— Nicholas looked at Morganson carefully through his cracked lenses. The inspector's face was calm and sympathetic, but his grey, piercing eyes looked cold, assessing. They were not looking at a man, but at a problem that needed to be solved. He knows him, thought Nicholas. He knows Stafford. Not just knows, he is connected with him. Otherwise, why would a police inspector personally come to the night watch office because of a complaint against an ordinary watchman? "I am healthy," said Nicholas.
"And I perform my work." 22 years without a single reprimand, Lundgren sighed. "Exactly, Hanson, 22 years. Don't ruin your service record. Consider this a warning. One more complaint and I will be forced to suspend you from duty. Do you understand what that means?" Nicholas understood. It meant no salary, no $14 a month on which a family of 7 was fed, no coal, no bread, no milk for little Ingrid. That simple. That was the price of questions. "I understand, Mr. Lundgren," said Nicholas. He put on his cap and left. On the street it was snowing, large, quiet, indifferent to everything. Nicholas stood at the door of the office and watched snowflakes settle on the sleeves of his coat. His hands did not tremble, his head was clear. The anger he had felt after the visit to Morganson 2 weeks earlier had been replaced by something else, cold, collected determination. They wanted him to be silent. They wanted him to retreat.
Very well. He would be silent, but he would not retreat.
In the evening, Karen found the locket. It happened in an ordinary way, as all domestic catastrophes happen. She was going through his coat, sewing up the lining of a pocket that had come apart at the seam, and the locket fell to the floor. Silver, soot-covered, with 2 letters. Karen picked it up, turned it in her hands, and silently placed it on the table. When Nicholas entered the room, she was sitting at the table, looking at the locket the way one looks at a thing that has changed something important. "Whose is this?" she asked, and her voice was so even, so quiet, that Nicholas understood. She was thinking the worst. Not the worst he had feared, but another, a woman's. "Karen, whose locket is this, Nicholas? A and L. Whose initials? Do you have another woman?" Just like that. 26 years of marriage, 6 children, thousands of nights. When he went into the darkness and she remained waiting.
And one silver trinket with someone else's letters could destroy everything. Because trust is a fragile thing, even if it was built over a quarter of a century. "Sit down," said Nicholas. "I will tell you everything from the very beginning, and you will understand that the matter is much worse than you think, but not in the way you think." He told her about the screams at 3 o'clock, about the black smoke, about the locket in the ashes, about the woman with the pale face at the door of the mansion, about the missing newcomers, about Morganson and his cold eyes, about today's summons to Lundgren, about the threat of dismissal. Karen listened without interrupting. Her face changed from disbelief to anxiety, from anxiety to fear, from fear to something like anger. "You could have told me earlier," she said when he finished. "You could have." "I'm sorry." "I'm not talking about sorry, Nicholas. I'm talking about you carrying this alone like a sack of coal up the stairs when there is someone nearby to help." He looked at her face, aged, tired, but still beautiful with the beauty that appears when a person has lived a real life. She did not say, "Drop this matter." She did not say, "Think about the family." She said, "There is someone nearby to help." "They will fire you if you continue," said Karen.
Yes. And if you drop it, will you be able to sleep peacefully? Nicholas was silent, turning the locket in his hands. A and L. Pale face, dark hair, scream cut off at 3 in the morning. No, he answered. Karen nodded, took the locket, wrapped it in a clean handkerchief, and put it in a tin box where she kept threads and buttons. Then be careful and don't lie to me anymore, he promised. Rasmus came the next day. December 27th, grey morning, wet snow from the sea. The boy was excited, cheeks burning, eyes shining. Mr. Hanson, Ole saw something.
Yesterday evening, a closed carriage drove up to the back gate. A young woman was let out of it. She walked herself, but somehow strangely, as if she didn't quite understand where she was going. The servant, that same Peter, held her by the arm and led her inside. The carriage left. Ole was sure it was a woman? Sure. He sat on the fence 3 steps away. Says young, in a dark dress, light hair. Didn't see the face, it was dark. Nicholas took off his glasses, wiped the cracked lens, put them back on. The world behind the lenses was still the same. Blurry, unfocused, unyielding. But inside something had shifted. Like a clock mechanism that had stood motionless for a long time, finally began to move. A new woman, brought secretly in the evening through the back gate. She walked, not understanding where. Perhaps already under the influence of something. Ether, laudanum.
Rasmus, said Nicholas, and his voice became different. Not the soft, slightly tired voice he usually used with the boy. Harder, more collected. Listen carefully. I need you, Ole, and Michael to do something. Not today, but soon, when I say. You need to be near the house at night. Not inside, not in the yard, outside, on the street. And when you hear my horn, run to the neighbors, knock on all doors, shout, "Fire!" Wake up the whole Broadway. Rasmus looked at him without blinking. You're going to go in there? He said, not asked, stated. Yes, it's dangerous, Mr. Hanson. I know. Rasmus was silent, then nodded once shortly. We'll be there. He left. Nicholas remained standing at the threshold of his basement apartment. Snow kept falling. New York wrapped itself in white, hiding its dirty corners and dark secrets under a clean cover. A wind blew from the sea, and old-timers at the market said that by the end of the week, a real blizzard would come. One of those that sweep houses up to the windows and knock horses off their feet. Nicholas looked at the sky. Heavy clouds crawled from the northwest, swollen and dark. A blizzard. Good. A blizzard is noise. A blizzard is when everyone sits at home and does not look out the windows. A blizzard is when an old watchman can do what he must while the city is blind and deaf. He returned to the apartment. Karen was feeding the younger children lunch. Ingrid, 4 years old, was playing with a wooden doll in the corner. Seeing her father, she ran up and hugged his knees. Papa, is it true you talk to the moon at night? Who told you that? Hannah from the neighboring house. She says you shout on the street because you're crazy. Nicholas squatted, took his daughter in his arms. She was light, warm, smelled of milk and bread. I'm not crazy, sunshine. I tell the city what time it is so everyone knows. Why? So no one gets lost in time. Ingrid thought, then nodded with the seriousness peculiar only to 4-year-olds. Then okay. Nicholas put her down. Karen looked at him from the table. He met her gaze and saw in it what he feared. She understood everything. She understood that he had made up his mind, that she could not stop him, and that all she could do was wait. Wait again while he went into the darkness.
He returned to his chair, sat down, and began checking his equipment. The horn, polished, resonant, capable of waking an entire block. The rattle, heavy, wooden, with copper plates. Lantern, flint, notebook, and also a folding knife that he usually did not take on duty, but today slipped into his boot. The wind outside the window was strengthening, the sky darkening. New York waited for the blizzard, and Nicholas Hanson waited for the night.
The blizzard came on December 28th, closer to evening as the old-timers had promised.
It did not creep up, it struck. The wind from the sea hit the city like a fist, and New York bent, went blind, went deaf. Snow did not fall, it flew horizontally, stinging, prickly, clogging eyes and mouth. By 8 in the evening, the streets were empty. Even cab drivers hid, even dogs fell silent. Lanterns on the crossroads swung like drunkards and went out one by one. Nicholas left the house at 9 as usual. Karen stood at the door. She did not say, "Be careful." That would have been too simple. She said, "I will wait." 3 words. 26 years in 3 words. Nicholas nodded, adjusted his glasses. The cracked left lens instantly covered with snow, and he stepped into the white darkness. The first round he made honestly, the entire route, every turn, every crossroads. He announced the time, although the wind tore the words from his mouth and threw them back.
The horn sounded unclear. The blizzard swallowed the sound like cotton.
Listen, residents, it's 10 o'clock. The blizzard is strengthening. Stay in your houses.
Who heard him? Maybe no one. Maybe 1 or 2 people behind closed shutters who habitually noted, "The watchman is walking, so the world is in place." By 11, Nicholas reached Broadway, stopped in his alley opposite the mansion. Snow plastered his face, but he made out the main thing: light in the second-floor window. Not bright, yellowish, candlelight. Stafford was not sleeping. Nicholas walked on, turned the corner, and saw what he was looking for: the coal hatch. Rasmus had told him about it 2 days earlier. A cast-iron lid in the pavement right by the house wall, through which coal was poured into the basement bunker. The boy had been observant. He noticed that Peter opened the hatch for the coal man and did not lock it with a padlock, but simply slid a bolt from outside.
Nicholas squatted,
Felt for the lid under the layer of snow, swept the snow away with his mitten. The bolt, cold, tight. He pulled off the mitten and pulled with bare fingers. The metal burned his skin with frost. The bolt gave way with a quiet screech that the blizzard immediately swallowed. The lid opened. From the hatch came the smell of coal, dampness, and something else. That same sweetish chemical smell that Nicholas could not identify then, but now knew. Ether. Heavy, stupefying smell of ether. He hesitated. 1 second, 2, 3. Below was darkness. Behind was the blizzard. Ahead was the unknown. Nicholas was 50 years old. His knees hurt, his eyes saw poorly, and in his pocket lay a folding knife with which he usually peeled apples. No hero, no soldier. A night watchman with a copper horn. But who, if not me, he thought. Who else? He lowered his legs into the hatch, felt for the iron ladder and climbed down. The coal bunker was cramped, 5 steps long, 3 wide.
Nicholas struck a flint, lit the lantern.
The dim light picked out a pile of coal against the wall, brick walls, low ceiling, and a wooden door padded with felt, apparently for soundproofing. That was why the screams had come through muffled. That was why they could be heard only in the dead silence of 3 o'clock at night. The door was not locked. Nicholas pushed it and entered. A narrow corridor with whitewashed walls. The smell of ether here was stronger, thick, suffocating. Nicholas's head spun, and he pressed his sleeve to his nose. 2 gas jets on the walls burned with weak flames, lighting the way. Someone had taken care of the light. Someone had been here recently. At the end of the corridor, another door. This one metal, heavy, with a lever instead of a handle. Nicholas pulled the lever down. The door opened silently. The hinges were oiled. What he saw behind it, Nicholas Hanson remembered to the end of his days. Every detail, every object, as he remembered faces, forever, without the possibility of forgetting. A large room, vaulted, clearly converted from an old wine cellar. Whitewashed walls, stone floor washed to a shine. In the center, a table, the very one Ola had seen through the window. Long, wooden, with metal edges and leather straps at the sides. Nearby, a smaller, wheeled table full of vials, flasks, and instruments. Nicholas did not understand surgery, but he recognized the knives, saws, and clamps. On a shelf against the wall, glass jars with something cloudy that he preferred not to examine closely. And on the table, a woman, young, fair-haired, in a simple shift. She lay motionless, eyes closed, hands and feet strapped with belts, face pale, almost white, but her chest rose barely noticeably, slowly. She was alive. Next to her head stood a flask with a gauze mask, an ether inhaler. Nicholas had seen similar ones in newspaper drawings. He approached closer.
His hands trembled. The lantern danced in his fist, and shadows darted across the walls like frightened birds. Nicholas bent over the woman. She breathed shallowly, rarely, under the influence of ether, unconscious but alive. "I'm here," he whispered, although he knew she could not hear. "I'm here, and I won't leave you." He began to unfasten the straps. His fingers obeyed poorly, frozen, clumsy. The left wrist strap gave way, the right buckle jammed. Nicholas reached for the knife. "I wouldn't do that, Hanson." The voice came from the doorway, calm even, with a slight note of weariness. Nicholas turned. Dr. Eric Stafford stood in the doorway, tall, thin, in a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and a dark vest. His face, narrow, pale, with a neat beard and dark eyes, looked at Nicholas without anger, without fear, almost with curiosity, like an entomologist looks at a beetle that has crawled into the wrong box. Nicholas finally saw him up close. 6 steps away, enough for his eyes, and the face clicked and imprinted forever. High forehead, sunken cheeks, thin lips, and long white hands with neatly trimmed nails. Surgeon's hands. "You broke into my house," said Stafford. "That is a crime, you understand?" "And this?" Nicholas nodded at the table, at the woman, at the straps. "This is medicine that you would not understand, and you don't need to. Medicine does not bring patients secretly in closed carriages through the back gate. Medicine does not strap people to tables in a basement. And medicine does not burn in a fireplace what produces black smoke and stinks across the street." Something flickered across Stafford's face for a fraction of a second, but Nicholas noticed. The mention of the smoke had hit home. "You don't understand what I'm doing," said the doctor, and for the first time in his voice there was something besides cold calm, impatience, irritation. "I am advancing science." Ether anesthesia is the greatest discovery of the century, but its possibilities have not been studied even halfway. Depth of immersion, duration of effect, reaction of various organs, all this needs to be researched. On living people, Hanson, not on corpses, not on dogs, on people. And these women, they are of no use to anyone anyway. Drifters, newcomers without documents, without relatives. I give them shelter, food, treatment. In return, a few hours of sleep from which they remember nothing. "Not all wake up," said Nicholas. Silence. Only the whistle of the blizzard above, muffled by the thickness of stone. "Science requires sacrifices," said Stafford quietly. "It is inevitable." Nicholas looked at him through the cracked lens and thought, Here stands this man, intelligent, educated, respected, donating money to the orphanage, bowing first in church.
And he speaks of living women, of women who had faces, names, fears, and hopes as expendable material, and believes what he says. That is the most terrible thing. He really believes it. "Put down the knife," said Stafford. "Leave the way you came. Tomorrow, Inspector Morganson will file your report as the ravings of a madman, and you will quietly retire. You will be assigned a small pension. Your family will not be touched. You will live the rest of your life in peace." "And her?" Nicholas nodded at the woman. "She will wake up in the morning and remember nothing, like the others, like those who did not wake up." Stafford did not answer. He took a step forward, then another. His hand slipped toward the surgical table, where the instruments lay. And then Nicholas Hanson did what he knew how to do best in the world, what he had done for 22 years, every night, in any weather. He raised the copper horn to his lips and blew. The sound was deafening. In the closed stone basement, it hit the walls, reflected from the ceiling, rushed about, growing and multiplying. Stafford recoiled, clutching his ears, and Nicholas blew, long, powerfully, putting into that sound everything that had accumulated over 3 weeks: fear, anger, despair, stubbornness. 22 years of a hoarse voice that had announced the time and called for peace. Only now he called for unrest. He called for people. The horn fell silent. Nicholas pulled the rattle from his pocket and whirled it above his head. The sharp, piercing crack of wooden plates burst into the silence and flew upward through the ceiling, through the walls, through the howl of the blizzard. "You madman," hissed Stafford. "No one will hear you. The blizzard." But Nicholas knew something the doctor did not. He knew that outside, 20 steps from the house, pressed against the fence of a neighboring garden, stood 3 boys. 3 invisibles. 3 pairs of young, sharp ears that had been waiting for this signal. Rasmus heard it first. He later told that the sound of the horn broke through from below, from under the ground, muffled but recognizable. And the boys ran knee-deep in snow in the blinding blizzard. They ran in 3 directions and began pounding on doors. Not just knocking, beating with fists, kicking with feet, and shouting, "Fire! Fire on Broadway! It's burning! Fire!" The magic word. In Woodenstone, New York, where everyone remembered the great fire of years past, this word acted like the strike of a bell. Doors opened. People ran out in nightshirts and fur coats thrown over their shoulders, with buckets, hooks, lanterns. The blizzard lashed their faces, but they went because fire was worse than blizzard. Upstairs in the basement, Nicholas heard the tramp of feet and shouts. Stafford heard them too. His face changed. Cold curiosity gave way to something Nicholas had not seen in him before: panic. The doctor rushed to the door, but Nicholas was faster. Not with his body, a 50-year-old body would lose, but the rattle in his hand described a wide arc and crashed into the gas jet by the door. Glass shattered, the flame flared and went out. The corridor plunged into darkness. Stafford hesitated. That 1 second was enough for Nicholas to... Further, everything happened quickly. 10 minutes later, or maybe 5, in darkness and chaos, time lost shape. From above came a crash. The front door was broken in. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, many voices. The door to the basement room flew open. In the doorway stood a man with a lantern, neither policeman nor fireman. Nicholas squinted through the cracked lens and recognized the face. He had seen it before, fleetingly on the street. Lean, bearded, in glasses and a rumpled coat. A newspaper man. That same boy newspaper seller from the market who had grown up and become a journalist. No, not that boy. Another man, but of the same breed. Eyes hungry, sharp, noticing everything. Behind him, neighbors. A man in a fur coat over a nightshirt. A woman with a lantern. 2 more. They looked at the table, at the woman in straps, at the flasks of ether, at the surgical instruments, and their faces changed. "God have mercy," someone whispered. "This is a laboratory," said the newspaper man, and his voice was not frightened, but even professional. "An illegal surgical laboratory. Gentlemen, remember everything you see. I am Christian Wilhelm Poulsen, reporter for the New York Daily." Exactly at that moment, Inspector Morganson appeared on the stairs. Someone from the yard workers had sent for the police, and Morganson had rushed personally in a coat over his uniform, with snow on his sideburns and fury in his grey eyes. He pushed through the crowd, saw Nicholas, and pointed a finger at him. "There he is, Hanson, the night watchman. He broke into the house. This is burglary with trespass. Arrest him." But no one moved. The neighbors were not looking at Nicholas. They were looking at the table, at the straps, at the woman who began to stir. The ether was wearing off. "Inspector," said Poulsen, and in his voice appeared that special, gentle politeness journalists reserve for the most dangerous questions. "You have just demanded the arrest of the man who discovered a woman strapped to a surgical table in a basement. Are you sure you want me to write that down?" Morganson froze. Nicholas saw how his face changed, from fury to confusion, from confusion to the realization that the trap had snapped shut. Not for Nicholas, for him. "I didn't know about this," said Morganson. "I arrived on a call. They reported a fire and a break-in." "Of course," nodded Poulsen, and wrote something in his notebook. They found Stafford in the corridor. He sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, staring ahead with unseeing eyes. He did not try to run, did not resist. When he was led upstairs into the blizzard, he walked obediently, like a man who had long waited for this moment and had finally received it. The woman, her name was Margaret. She had arrived from Boston 3 days earlier, believing a promise of free treatment. They wrapped her in a blanket and carried her to the neighbor's house. She came to slowly, as if emerging from a heavy sleep, and the first thing she said was, "Where am I?" Nicholas stood on the steps of the mansion and watched all this through his old glasses. The blizzard seemed to be subsiding, or so it seemed to him. People bustled around, lanterns burned, someone shouted, someone cried. Rasmus ran up, tugged at his coat sleeve. "Mr. Hanson, are you alive?" "Alive, Rasmus. Thank you." "You're all covered in snow, even more." Nicholas took off his glasses. Indeed, to the old crack on the left lens, a new one had been added on the right. The world became even more blurred, but strangely, at that moment, he saw clearer than ever. Poulsen approached him when the crowd began to thin. "Hanson, the night watchman, right?" "Yes." "Will you tell me everything? I need details for the article." "I will, but first tell me, do you know who Dr. Stafford's first wife was?" Poulsen raised an eyebrow. "Anna Lund died 5 years ago, officially from fever. Why do you ask?" "Anna Lund. A and L." Nicholas slowly lowered his hand into his pocket. The locket was not there. It lay at home in Karen's tin box, wrapped in a clean handkerchief. But the letters burned in his memory like a red-hot brand. "Because she did not die of fever," said Nicholas. "She was his first experiment." The locket he had burned together with the last victim's clothes had belonged not to that woman. It had belonged to Anna, his wife. He had kept it all these years, perhaps as a trophy, perhaps as a reminder, or perhaps as the only thing left of his conscience. Poulsen was silent, then slowly wrote something in his notebook and looked at Nicholas with a respect no one had ever shown him before, without a drop of condescension. "How do you know this?" "I don't know, I suppose, but checking it is already your job." 2 weeks later, the New York Daily published a big, detailed article on the entire front page. Poulsen checked, and Nicholas turned out to be right. Anna Lund, née Anderson, had married the young surgeon Stafford in 1840. 2 years later, she died of fever without an autopsy, without witnesses except her husband himself. She was buried in the cemetery, and the only thing missing among her belongings was the silver locket with the initials, her mother's wedding gift. Stafford did not confess, but his notebooks found in the basement laboratory told more than any confession.
5 years of experiments, ether dosages, body reactions, descriptions of procedures that made even seasoned police doctors turn pale. And the first entry, dated October 1842, began with the words, "Subject number 1, woman 26 years old." Anna Lund was 26 in 1842. Morganson was quietly removed from service. The authorities did not like public scandals, but Poulsen had mentioned him in the article, and that was enough. The inspector's career, with impeccable sideburns, ended in one day. Nicholas returned home at dawn on December 29th. By then, the blizzard had subsided, and over New York hung that special silence that occurs only after a heavy snowfall, clean, ringing, like the silence inside a Christmas bell. The city lay under a white cover, and the first rays of winter sun colored the roofs pink. Karen opened the door before he knocked. She had not slept all night. He saw it in her face. Ingrid sat in her arms, sleepy, warm, clutching a wooden doll. "Papa," said Ingrid, "were you talking to the moon again?" "No, sunshine," said Nicholas. "Today I talked to people." He entered the house, took off his coat, took off his glasses. Both lenses were now cracked, and the world had finally blurred into a warm, soft, bright spot. But it was not scary, because everything he needed to see was right in front of him. Karen put on the kettle. Nicholas sat down at the table, placed his hands on the tabletop, and closed his eyes. A minute later, he fell asleep. For the first time in 3 weeks, soundly, without dreams, without screams, without black smoke. The conscience of the city was finally at peace. However, a few days later, when the case was already gaining momentum in the press, Nicholas Hanson was found dead in his basement apartment. Officially, a heart attack caused by overwork and cold. But in his hand was clutched a fragment of the locket chain, and on the table lay a note from an unknown person. "You saw too much." Karen and the children were left alone, without a pension and with debts, while Stafford's case was gradually hushed up by influential patrons. The city quickly forgot the hero watchman, preferring to believe that it had all been nothing more than a terrible dream on a stormy night.